"Here's $50. I just need a dad for one day," said the little girl to the lonely millionaire CEO. The park was almost empty, saved for the whispering trees and the occasional chirp of late summer birds. Nathan Hale, 30 years old, sat motionless on a weathered bench near the fountain. His suit was pristine charcoal gray, tailored to perfection. His shoes gleamed, his tie straight, but his shoulders slumped with a heaviness that no amount of grooming could hide. The funeral had ended just hours earlier. It was a short, stiff affair marked by no tears, only business associates murmuring condolences as a mahogany casket was lowered into the ground. His father had died precisely as he had lived, distant, formal, and proud. Nathan hadn't cried. He simply didn't know how. Now he stared blankly at the ducks gliding across the water, his hands folded tightly in his lap. Silence surrounded him until he heard the softest crunch of sneakers on gravel and looked up. A little girl no more than 4 years old stood in front of him. She had a wild mop of golden curls, a blue dress adorned with tiny sunflowers, and clutched what looked like a handmade wallet crafted from cardboard and glittery stickers. Her eyes, wide and serious, met his. She took a step closer and said carefully and clearly, "Hi, I have $50. I just need a dad for one day." Nathan blinked, unsure if he'd heard her right. "What?" he asked, his voice low and rough from hours of silence. She held out the makeshift wallet. "I saved it, all of it from the Tooth Fairy birthdays, even some change I found under the couch." Nathan's brows furrowed. "Why do you need a dad?" The little girl hesitated, then sat down next to him on the bench as if they were old friends. She opened the cardboard wallet and began counting out wrinkled bills and coins with great care, her voice trembling slightly. "Because the kids at the playground said I don't have one," she explained. "They always say it, Emily doesn't have a dad. She's the weird one." She glanced up at him. "But I figured if I have $50, maybe someone like you could help me pretend just for today. Like in the ads on TV, you know, where the dad holds your hand, buys you ice cream, and pushes you on the swing." Nathan didn't know what to say. He looked at her small hands, her earnest expression, and suddenly felt something twist in his chest. For a moment, he saw himself years ago watching other kids with their fathers, wondering what it would be like to be chosen just once. He swallowed hard. "You don't have to pay me," he said finally, gently closing her cardboard wallet. Emily's face lit up. "Really? You'll be my dad for today?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, okay. Just for today." She leapt off the bench and grabbed his hand. "First thing, ice cream." The two of them walked to the nearby cart. Nathan bought her a vanilla cone with sprinkles and got a coffee for himself. Emily chattered the whole time about her cat named Muffin, her favorite stuffed animal named Princess Zebra, and how she wanted to be a zookeeper. Then they went to the playground. Nathan pushed her on the swing, caught her at the bottom of the slide, even helped her climb the jungle gym. She giggled, calling him Dad every few minutes just to try it out. And each time, something in Nathan cracked a little more open. He took a selfie with her on the merry-go-round. Emily insisted they take 3 more just in case one was blurry. By late afternoon, they sat under a tree, her head leaning on his arm. "I've never had this much fun," she said dreamily. "You're a good dad even for one day." Nathan smiled, a real and aching smile. "Thanks, kiddo." When the sun began to dip, Emily led him by the hand to the edge of the park down a quiet street lined with small houses. She skipped ahead, then turned and pointed. "That's our house. I live there with my mom. She works a lot." Nathan nodded, his heart sinking as he realized their time was ending. He followed her to the porch of a modest, weather-worn home with flower pots on the steps. The air was still as the front door creaked open. Leia stood motionless on the porch, her hand gripping the frame, her heart suddenly racing. Her eyes landed on Emily. First, sun-kissed cheeks, messy curls bouncing a smile too wide for a regular day. Then her gaze shifted to the man standing beside her daughter, a stranger wearing a tailored suit holding her child's hand. Leia's breath caught. "Emily," she called, her voice tight. "Who is this?" The little girl bounded up the steps beaming. "Mommy, this is my dad, just for today." Leia's eyes widened. "Your what?" Emily held up her cardboard wallet proudly. "I paid him $50. I saved it all. I found a real dad, Mommy, like I said I would." Leia's mouth went dry. The man stepped forward, awkward but sincere. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen this way. She just came up to me at the park, offered me $50, and well, I couldn't say no. I didn't take her money, I promise." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a business card, and offered it to Leia with a nervous glance. "My name is Nathan Hale. I run a tech firm downtown. I swear I only wanted her to be safe and happy. That's all." Leia took the card but didn't look at it. Her hands were trembling. Nathan stepped back. "I'll go now. I'm sorry again." And just like that, he turned and walked down the porch steps, disappearing into the fading daylight. Leia stood there for a moment, frozen. Emily tugged at her sleeve. "He pushed me on the swings, bought me ice cream. He even took pictures with me. Want to see?" Still silent, Leia followed her daughter inside. The house was dim, quiet, a small living room with second-hand furniture and crayon marks on the walls. Emily skipped to the coffee table, grabbed her mom's phone already open to the photo gallery. There they were, selfies of Emily on Nathan's shoulders, laughing on the merry-go-round, clutching his hand as they shared ice cream. Her smile in those pictures wasn't just joy, it was belonging. Leia sank onto the couch. $50, she whispered. Emily nodded proudly. "I saved it all by myself since last Halloween. Remember when I asked if Santa could bring me a dad, but Santa didn't, so I thought maybe I could find one on my own." Leia pressed a hand to her mouth. She had worked so hard to give Emily everything, every meal, every birthday balloon, every second she had left after double shifts at the diner. But there were things she couldn't provide. Things she didn't know her daughter was still longing for, and that hurt more than anything. That night after dinner and bath time, Leia tucked Emily into bed. The little girl curled up with her favorite stuffed animal. The phone clutched tight in her arms, still showing the smiling picture. "Good night, Mommy," she mumbled. "Good night, Daddy." Even if just for today. Leia sat beside her, gently brushing a curl from Emily's forehead. She didn't respond. Later, alone in the quiet kitchen, Leia picked up the business card from the table. It listed Nathan Hale, CEO of Hale Tech Systems, along with a direct line and words like innovation, connection, purpose. She stared at it for a long time. Then, unable to help herself, she pulled out her phone again and looked at the photo. Emily's face was pressed against Nathan's shoulder mid-laugh. His expression wasn't stiff or merely polite. It was real. Something stirred in Leia's chest, a mix of fear, gratitude, and an ache she hadn't felt in years. Not for herself, but for the little girl asleep in the next room who had saved $50 just to feel normal, just to feel wanted. And for the first time in a long while, Leia let the tears fall. Nathan Hale sat behind his glass desk on the 32nd floor, the city stretching endlessly beyond his window. The skyline was as sharp and polished as the world he had built, but none of it felt like it used to. Not after the funeral, and not after her Emily. The sound of her tiny voice still echoed in his head. "I just need a dad for one day." It had been only a few days since the park, since the moment she pressed that cardboard wallet into his hand, her eyes full of a hope no 4-year-old should have to feel. He hadn't heard from her or her mother since. But he couldn't stop seeing that face. Now the numbers on the spreadsheets in front of him blurred. The emails the investor calls the quarterly goals, they all felt meaningless. He leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and that's when the memory returned. He was 7, standing outside the school gates, watching the other kids wave goodbye to their dads. Some were getting piggyback rides, others holding their father's hands. Nathan stood alone, adjusting his backpack straps, pretending not to care. His father had never shown up, not once. There were no bedtime stories, no coloring books, no afternoon walks. His dad gave him books on finance and taught him to win, but never taught him how to feel. Nathan had buried that version of himself. Until Emily. She reminded him of something he didn't realize he was still missing. Not the chance to be a father, but the chance to be someone's. He opened the drawer in his desk, pulled out the photo they'd taken on the merry-go-round. She had insisted on taking it. In it, Emily was grinning from ear to ear, her arms around his neck like they'd always belonged there. He hadn't faked the smile in that photo. He stared at it for a long time, then whispered to himself, "Maybe I'm not supposed to forget this." A part of him still tried to reason, "You're busy. You've got a company to run. This isn't your responsibility." But another voice, quieter, deeper, rose beneath that. "You could have been that little girl, and maybe you were. And maybe you're still waiting for someone to come back for you, too." Nathan exhaled slowly and stood. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He didn't need to. Some things didn't require explanation. The next morning, Nathan stood again in front of the small house on a quiet street. The paint chipped the wind chimes, soft in the breeze. He hesitated, hand raised to knock, but the door opened before he could. Leah stood there in her work uniform, clearly just about to leave. She blinked in surprise. "Nathan?" He gave a sheepish smile. "I was in the area." She tilted her head slightly but didn't question him. Before either of them could say more, a voice from inside squealed, "Is that Daddy?" Emily came running out, her backpack, barely zipped her curls, still damp from a rushed bath. "Mommy has work," she announced proudly. "Can he take me to school?" Leah hesitated, her eyes darting between them. Nathan stepped in. "Only if that's okay with you." She hesitated again, then nodded. She'd love that. Nathan found himself crouching on the sidewalk tying Emily's shoes. One lace was missing entirely, and he improvised with a knot. Then he brushed the curls from her face and straightened the tiny hat she wore. As they walked together toward the school, Emily squeezed his hand tighter. "Can you come inside today?" she asked. "Inside your classroom," she clarified. "My friends, they said I don't have a daddy, but if they see you, they'll know. You can smile. You don't even have to talk if it's weird." Nathan smiled gently. "You want me to be your dad at school?" She nodded. "Just until recess. Then you can go be CEO again." At the gate, Emily turned and spotted her classmates. With the confidence only a child could have, she ran up to them and shouted, "This is my dad. He wears a suit. He fixes broken toys, and he knows how to make cupcakes." The kids stared. Then one girl whispered, "Cool." Emily beamed and waved goodbye to Nathan as she skipped into the classroom. Nathan stood frozen. His heart felt like it had been rewired, like it had found a beat it forgot it ever had. And as he raised a hand and waved back, he whispered to himself, "This is the first time someone's proud to call me Dad." And somehow, that was everything. It started with a phone call. Leah stared at the contact saved as Nathan Hale, her thumb hovering over the green button. She had typed and erased the message 3 times already. In the background, Emily bounced on the couch, clinging to her stuffed giraffe and chanting, "Cupcakes with Mommy and Daddy like a family." Leah sighed, then pressed call. That afternoon, Nathan stood in front of their small house again, holding a grocery bag filled with cake mix and uncertainty. "I'm not great in the kitchen," he admitted as Leah opened the door. She gave a soft smile. "They're just cupcakes. Emily's more into licking the spoon than actually eating them." Inside their apartment smelled faintly of vanilla and lavender. Emily had already set up the bowls flour dusted across the table like snow. "Let's make chocolate," she declared, handing Nathan a whisk. "And Mommy's going to help too, right?" Leah started to decline, but Emily grabbed her hand. "Come on, we're a team." Just like that, Leah was pulled into the kitchen. Half an hour later, there was more flour on the floor than in the bowl. Nathan had batter on his shirt. Emily was laughing so hard she had to lean against the counter. Then, as Leah turned to check the oven, Emily flicked a spoonful of batter at Nathan. It landed on his cheek. He gasped, "Oh no, chocolate attack!" Leah turned to see him swipe frosting from the bowl and dot it on Emily's nose. The kitchen exploded with laughter, and Leah, so used to staying composed, laughed too. Not a polite chuckle, but a real laugh, the kind that shakes out of you when you stop holding back. She covered her mouth, but it didn't help. Watching Nathan, this polished CEO, trying to wipe frosting from his tie with a paper towel, it was just too much. Nathan looked at her then. No calculation, no defenses, just soft eyes and a crooked smile. For the first time in a very long while, he felt like he belonged. And somewhere in his mind, a voice tried to echo his father's old mantra: "Feelings are weakness, don't get attached." But tonight, Nathan didn't want to listen. Later after dinner, Leah changed into a sweatshirt. The three of them settled in Emily's bedroom. Emily lay in the middle of the bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and dreams. Nathan sat on one side, Leah on the other. A storybook opened in Nathan's lap. He read in a big, booming narrator voice. Leah joined in with silly character voices, making Emily giggle and clap. Halfway through the story, Emily whispered, half asleep, "I wish Daddy wasn't just for one day." Nathan paused, the words hanging in the air. The only sound was the hum of the bedside lamp. Leah tucked the blanket around Emily, brushing curls from her face. The little girl's hand still held the hem of Nathan's sleeve. Nathan stood to leave, but Leah's voice stopped him. "You can stay a little while longer," she said gently. "She sleeps deeper when someone's close." So he sat back down, not as a guest, but as someone who'd been quietly welcomed into something fragile and real. Later, after Emily had drifted into a peaceful sleep, Leah and Nathan stepped out onto the small porch. They each held mugs of warm tea as a breeze passed by. Neither spoke at first. The silence felt necessary. Then Nathan finally said, "When I was a kid, I used to wish my dad would draw with me or walk me into class, but all he ever taught me was how to win." He looked toward the street, then back at her. "Emily gave me a chance to do all the things I never got to do. Not as a CEO, not for anyone's approval, just as her dad." Leah didn't reply right away. Her eyes shimmered. A few minutes later, Nathan stepped quietly back into Emily's room. She stirred, but didn't wake, still hugging her giraffe. He leaned down, brushed her hair from her face, and whispered, "I'm not going anywhere, kiddo. Not unless you want me to." It was supposed to be a normal Thursday. The sky was clear. The sun was gentle, and Leah had the morning shift at the diner. Nathan had offered to walk Emily to school again, something that had become quietly routine over the past few weeks. Emily wore her favorite pink dress with the unicorn buttons, and Nathan had packed her lunch himself, 2 jelly sandwiches with crusts, cut off a juice box, and a tiny note that simply read, "You're brave. I love you, Dad." She beamed when she found it and tucked it into her backpack like it was treasure. But that afternoon, everything shifted. Leah had just arrived home when the phone rang. It was the school. Emily had been crying. She rushed over as fast as she could, only to find Nathan already there, crouched beside Emily on the bench outside the office. Her little shoulders shook, her face buried in her stuffed giraffe. "What happened?" Leah asked, breathless. The teacher explained gently that some of the children were teasing Emily, saying her dad wasn't her real dad. Emily lifted her face, cheeks streaked with tears. They said you're not my real daddy, that I made you up." Nathan's heart clenched. He looked into her eyes and asked softly, "Do you believe that?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Are you going to leave if I'm not good enough?" Nathan dropped to his knees right there on the sidewalk. He took her tiny hands into his. "No," he said, voice firm but full of love. "I'm not going anywhere, Em. But what if I cry too much or mess up or get in trouble?" He pulled her into his chest and hugged her tightly. "Even if you cry every day, even if you mess up 1,000 times, even if you yell or spill juice or forget to brush your teeth," he said with a smile she couldn't see, "I'm still your dad, because being your dad isn't about being perfect." He pulled back just enough to look at her. "It's about staying, and I'm staying forever if you'll let me." Emily nodded slowly, then launched herself back into his arms. From a short distance, Leah stood on the second-floor walkway of the school watching. She had just arrived and hadn't wanted to interrupt. She saw the way Emily clung to Nathan, the way he held her, the way he spoke to her like she was the most important person in the world. And something inside her began to shift. All these years, she had taught herself to be cautious, to do it alone, to expect disappointment and be grateful for survival. But now, watching Nathan kneel beside her daughter, the thought came uninvited, but undeniable. Maybe this time it's real. Later that evening, after dinner, Emily sat in Nathan's lap drawing hearts with crayons on an old notepad. She looked up and asked, "Daddy?" He glanced down. "Yeah, sweetheart. I don't want a perfect daddy. I just want you." Nathan blinked hard. The lump in his throat made it hard to speak. Leah from the kitchen heard every word. She didn't say anything, but for the first time in a long time, she smiled without hesitation. It was the kind of smile that said, maybe we're not pretending anymore. The auditorium was buzzing with the chatter of proud parents and excited children. Paper streamers hung across the ceiling, hand-drawn posters colored in crayon lined the walls, and little wooden chairs were arranged in rows. It was Family Day at Ridgewood Preschool, a day meant to celebrate love, connection, and belonging. Emily sat in the front row. Her dress neatly pressed a small ribbon in her golden curls. She clutched a folded piece of paper tightly in her hands, legs swinging nervously beneath the chair. Leah sat beside her, heart pounding, and just behind them. Nathan adjusted his tie for the 5th time, not because it was crooked, but because he needed something to do with his hands. The principal stepped up to the small podium, smiling warmly. "Today, one of our students has something special to share. A little story from a big heart." Emily stood up slowly, climbed the 2 small steps to the stage, and approached the microphone. It looked almost too big for her, but she didn't flinch. Her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded her note, then looked out at the sea of faces. She took a breath, then began. "When I started school, I didn't have a daddy." Some parents shifted in their seats. A few children looked at each other, curious. "I saw other kids get picked up by their dads. Some had lunch with them or did puzzles or made pancakes together. I never got to do that." She paused, swallowing hard. "So I saved up $50. It took me a whole year. I thought maybe that's how much it costs to have a dad for just one day." Leah's eyes filled with tears. Nathan sat frozen, his breath held. Emily smiled softly. "But when I met Nathan, I didn't get one day. I got someone who tied my shoes and made cupcakes and walked me to school even when it rained." She turned, locking eyes with Nathan. He was already standing. "I thought I bought a dad with $50, she said. "But really I found a family." "I found a family." There was silence in the room. Not the uncomfortable kind, but the kind where everyone knows they've just witnessed something bigger than themselves. Then applause, soft at first, then growing until the entire room was clapping. But Emily didn't seem to hear it. She was looking only at Nathan. He walked slowly to the stage, stepped beside her, and knelt down to her level. He wrapped his arms around her, whispering something only she could hear. She nodded, smiling through the tears that had finally come. Then he turned to the crowd, standing tall, his voice clear. "This little girl didn't buy a dad," he said. "She gave me the one thing money could never buy: a second chance, a purpose, a place." He looked at Leah, and his voice softened. "She didn't just teach me how to be a father, she reminded me how to be a man." The room was silent again. But this time it wasn't out of surprise, it was reverence. And somewhere in the back row a teacher whispered to another, "That man didn't just show up, he stayed." Emily reached up and grabbed Nathan's hand. He squeezed back. She had come with $50 and a dream. What she found was more than she could have imagined, and so had he. The apartment had never been truly quiet. Not with a 4-year-old and a mother working double shifts to keep everything running. But tonight the silence was different. It was peaceful. Emily had fallen asleep on the couch, her head on Nathan's lap, one hand still gripping a crayon. The drawing she'd made a house with 3 smiling stick figures and the word family scribbled in uneven block letters, rested on the coffee table. Nathan looked down at her, brushing a curl from her forehead. She sighed softly in her sleep, the kind of sigh that said, "I'm safe." Leah stepped out from the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel. She caught the scene and paused, her heart tightening at the sight. "She used to fall asleep waiting for someone to come home," Leah said quietly. Nathan looked up, eyes soft. "And now she falls asleep knowing someone already has." They didn't say much else for a while. Words weren't always necessary between them now. The silences had grown comfortable, filled with understanding. After tucking Emily into bed, Nathan found Leah standing by the small window staring out at the night. The glow from the street lamp cast a warm outline around her. He approached slowly. "I've been thinking," he began carefully. "This little apartment, it's cozy, but it doesn't have a backyard for cupcake disasters or space for bedtime forts." She turned toward him, waiting. Nathan took a breath. "I have a place. It's a house not far from here, big enough for a garden, an actual dining table, a pink room if she wants it." Leah raised an eyebrow. "I'm not asking as a boyfriend," he said quickly. "I'm asking as someone who wakes up every morning thinking about how quiet his life used to be and how I don't want to go back to that. Not after hearing her laugh in the mornings, not after hearing your voice in the kitchen." She folded her arms. "Are you sure this isn't just gratitude or guilt?" "I'm sure," he said simply. "I don't want to help you. I want to build with you because the truth is, I don't know how to do life without you two anymore." Leah didn't answer right away. She walked over to the coffee table and picked up Emily's drawing. The stick figures grinned up at her. A child's fantasy maybe, but maybe not. She looked back at Nathan. "What does the pink room look like?" He smiled. "Has a skylight and enough space for a stuffed giraffe collection." Leah laughed. "She has 3. Then we're already behind on shelves." The move happened quietly without grand gestures. Just boxes and secondhand furniture and a little girl who couldn't stop skipping from room to room. Emily planted sunflowers in the backyard with Nathan. Leah cooked dinner while humming to old records Nathan didn't recognize, but secretly recorded on his phone to learn. Mornings became pancake rituals. Evenings were filled with storybooks and soft lullabies. Nathan, once a man of silence and structure, now knew how to braid a doll's hair and sing off-key without shame. Some nights Leah would find him asleep on the couch with Emily sprawled on his chest, both covered in crayon marks and cookie crumbs. And she'd smile because this wasn't about perfection. It was about presence. One night while watering the garden, Leah looked at Nathan and said, "I didn't say yes for you, you know." He tilted his head. She smiled gently. "I said yes because of her. Because the smile she wears around you, it's the one I used to dream she'd have one day." Nathan didn't respond right away. He just took her hand and held it. Family wasn't always made by blood. Sometimes it was made by choice, by staying, by showing up, by being exactly who someone needs you to be every single day. And in this little home with crayons on the table, pancakes on the stove, and love in the silence, they were becoming a family. The afternoon sun poured golden light over the little garden behind their new home. The grass was soft, the breeze gentle, and the sound of laughter carried through the warm air like music. Emily ran across the lawn with a paper crown tilted on her head, arms full of daisies she had just picked. A small checkered blanket was spread under the oak tree where Nathan and Leah sat with lemonade and a basket of cupcakes they'd baked that morning together. It was their first family picnic. Not fancy, not perfect, but real. Emily ran up, cheeks flushed and eyes sparkling. "I have something for you," she said, and reached into her backpack. She pulled out a folded piece of paper, carefully colored in crayon. On the front, a heart and the words, "To my daddy." Leah raised an eyebrow. Nathan sat up straighter. Emily handed it to Nathan with both hands. "Open it," she whispered, suddenly shy. He unfolded it slowly. Inside, written in blocky, uneven letters, was a note. "Dear Daddy, I don't need to hire a daddy anymore. I just want you forever." Nathan froze his breath, caught his eyes blurred. "I saved that money for so long," Emily said quietly, "but now I don't need it. I already have you." Nathan looked at her, then at Leah, and without another word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Leah's breath hitched. He stood, took a deep breath, and looked her in the eyes. "I know I can't replace anyone," he said. "I know I came into your lives by accident because of a little girl with too much hope and $50 in a cardboard wallet." He knelt on one knee, not just because of the tradition, but because of the weight of the moment. "But if you'll let me," he continued, "I want to be your family, not for a day, not for a while, but for as long as you'll have me." Leah covered her mouth with one hand. The other reached out to him, trembling. "I was never waiting for perfect," she whispered through tears. "I was just waiting for real." She nodded. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Nathan." He slipped the ring onto her finger as Emily squealed in delight, spinning in circles. Then she threw herself between them, wrapping her little arms around both their waists. "I have a daddy now," she cried. "Not just for one day." They laughed, holding each other close. 3 hearts no longer broken, but whole. Hand in hand, they walked toward the garden gate. The sun cast their shadows in front of them. 3 shapes stretched long and warm, moving together. A new chapter, a new beginning, a new promise. And somewhere in the breeze, if you listened closely, you could almost hear the echo of a little girl's first brave words. Only this time, it wasn't a question. It was an answer forever. If this story moved, your heart made you tear up, or reminded you of what truly matters, you're not alone. At Soul Injuring Stories, we believe in the quiet strength of love, the beauty of second chances, and how even the smallest act, like a little girl offering $50, can change a life forever. If you felt something real today, please subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to hit the like button to support us. Your encouragement helps us bring more stories that heal, inspire, and stir the soul. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep believing in the power of love.